Hello, friends. It's Chapo.
All right. Well, we're done with the serious news of the episode. So,
Yeah, now we can talk about the lighter stuff.
lighter fare. Okay. Gustavo Petro has become the first leftist president of Colombia.
Booyah! That's very significant because, like, all throughout the pink tide, Colombia was like the bulwark of against any kind of real like left wing surge there, and it's largely because of the level of violence they were able to apply on the left during that period to essentially keep them out of government that whole time.
Yeah, no, this one is particularly interesting, and I think significantly like more significant than Chile or really anywhere else that we've seen in the pink tide, because Colombia is like the Death Star for America's operations.
Yeah,
in South America. Yeah, this is incredibly significant. It wasn't a massive margin of victory. I think about like 3 points, but not like quite wide enough to challenge.
Yeah,
I mean, like other guys have challenged much wider victory margins, and I'm sure Bolsonaro will do that even if he gets drubbed by like 20 points. But yeah, this is to quote Brandon, big fucking deal.
Yeah, indeed.
Petro's an interesting guy. I mean, he said some not horribly encouraging things about Venezuela and other places in the sphere, but playing the game, trying to distance himself from when he was 17 and part of the M19 movement, and had a brief stint as like a child armed insurgent, which is pretty cool. But I mean, this is one of those things where in the immediate, it's very exciting and very good, but also, holy shit, we're going to see some terrible things attempted.
Yeah, absolutely. And the real just structural challenge facing all these new left governments is that they don't really have any kind of legislative mandate that was true of the earlier pink tide. Like, they're all governing on, like, as executives on the top of a government system where the legislative side is dominated by the conservatives. So it's going to be hard to work through the system. But also, there's going to be plenty of extra legal and extra constitutional pressure put on them, especially in fucking Colombia, where like every other country, like in Latin America, had to deal with like the shift towards mass democracy after World War II, and they all assimilated it like to one degree or another. And like sometimes they had to be preempted in the crisis moment in like the 60s and 70s with a coup, but that was something that had been developed. That whole process in 1948 in Colombia got like absolutely just headed off by this like assassination, followed by a 10-year civil war in the countryside between liberals and conservatives that basically ensured that there would be no like mass entry into politics by like the Colombian like workers and peasants. And that's been maintained by a drug-fueled murder machine that's funded both by the cocaine that we buy and also by the military hardware that our government gives to the Colombian state.
Yeah, the thing that we kind of turned Colombia into is pretty interesting because obviously there's like, the narco angle, but the other byproduct, I think, has been arguably farther reaching in the last 20 years. The right-wing mercenaries have been sort of like they're like the spackle of armed mercenaries. You can literally send them anywhere. Any repressive government in the last 20 years, whenever they have a war that their army is too shitty to fight, they hire Colombians.
Yep.
The same guys that were like, who killed thousands of people during the false positive scandal, they are now like in Yemen or wherever, hired by whatever company has an army in name only. But I don't know, like Petro might face a Brandonization in the way that it seems that Boric in Chile is.
Castillo too, yeah.
Well, Castillo, I feel like is a little different because he doesn't seem like terribly ideological.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's just it. That leads them kind of like flapping in the breeze compared, and the rest of these guys are like doing something that's more self-consciously attack. But like, what's the alternative? I mean,
yeah.
if you're going to try to assert, electoral power in this moment of crisis, then you're going to have to deal with the conditions, which is strong headwinds. Like it really is just the residual democracy, that we still are capable of expressing that even allows these people to take power, because every other force is pushing in the same direction to just break up any kind of democratic intervention in the functions of the state and totally privatize it at every level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that Petro does have going for him is that it will be more difficult to assassinate him than most guys.
Yeah.
He's got an entourage. He's always surrounded by guys who are strapped up.
Yeah, it'll be harder to get him that way.
Well, when
they have the previous left-wing challengers to the Colombian government have been blown up in airplanes too. They could pull that one off. We'll see.
Well, maybe he'll take a dirigible.
Oh my God, an armored blimp.
I mean, maybe they'll make a comeback. He's been people have said that he's always been surrounded by tons of security since he was an opposition figure to the Uribe government, because his big thing under Uribe was the parapolitics scandal.
Yeah.
Which is the involvement with paramilitaries among Colombia's right wing. Still, very, very shocking, very significant event. Hope all my prayer warriors can, at least keep an immediate Brandonization from happening.
I mean, I'm very interested by his proposals to wean the Colombian government off of cocaine and oil, because it's like, yeah, those are sources of reactionary power, but also it's like, where else are you getting the money?
Yeah, what can you do?
Yeah,
I did really like his opponent.
Oh, that guy ruled.
Rodolfo Hernandez.
Yeah.
Well,
it made sense that it came down to those two, though, because the center, like the respectable political center, is collapsing. All you have that's viable that like can get people's attention or any kind of investment is like, this ghost of like a left-wing populism, and then just pure clownish reactionary spectacle.
Yeah, Hernandez he ran as kind of like a, neither left or right, kind of like an aggro Andrew Yang type.
But the five-star movement style.
Yeah, exactly like that. The thing that the main mention of him in international press that I saw was when he said that he idolized Adolf Hitler as a great German thinker, and then later was like, no, I meant Einstein, which is like, I think like even funnier.
Yeah,
because like if you're a politics guy, it's like, oh yeah, no, I've just really, really like Einstein.
Yeah.
Like the theory of relativity is so important.
It's really crucial to my my designs as president. I forget Prince Machiavelli and the Art of War. I need to find out more about relativity in order to govern.
It was a good save.
I just like the idea. It's like, who's the smartest person? Like, doesn't that make sense? That who should you admire the most? This is the smartest guy, and that's Einstein.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is sort of like something that Andrew Yang would try.
Yeah.
It's like he was trying to do Andrew Yang, but filtered through like being an 80-year-old Colombian reactionary.
Yes.
Well,
I got a transition here if you want it.
Hit me.
So speaking of the center collapsing and leaving only the cartoonish reactionary wing and like the remaining residual memory of a left, you got a French election for the legislature where the centrist Macron faction, which had dominated, just collapses with a huge resurgence in the National Front on the right and a big boost for the Mélenchon-led left coalition. So it's happening everywhere, and here you have the very interesting and definitely repeatable phenomenon of the Macron voters, who had always claimed that the most important thing is keeping the far right out of power, and who the left wing usually votes for reliably when it's a question of them versus the right for that very reason. Instead of coming out and voting for the left to prevent the National Front from getting power, they fucking stayed home.
Yeah, they stayed home pouted. And then made statements about how they're against all extremes.
Yep. They did the shit that the Hillary people are mad about Bernie bros for doing, because that's who does that. The people who, at the end of the day, don't actually give a shit about any of these categories. They're not really worried about fascism. That's a fun, scary story they tell themselves to make their boring fucking lives interesting.
Yeah. The trend line in general in France, pretty bad. I mean, I remember last time we had these elections, immediately following the French presidential election, On March did like amazing.
Yeah, they swept.
They had like historic gains.
Because they're like, let's try this. This is a new thing, even though it's literally just fucking taking the Socialist Party and like removing the label and just slapping a new name on it. It's like, hey, when there's no other option and people don't want, in the majority, don't want to go to the extremes, sure, let's go for it. But then they get power, and what do? They preside over decline, and their only policy response is more decline, managed decline, cutting pensions, extending the, pushing back the retirement age, and, like, campaigning on this stuff. And of course, people are going to say, hell no. And that's what's so terrifying, is like what I think a lot of the centrists understand at some basal level is that, like, this is no longer repeatable. And therefore, the only real alternative to this right would have to be a like actual socialist left, which cannot be countenanced and can't really assert itself politically, especially in the United States, because of its weak institutional character.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about like a collapse of agreed upon reality, and that usually speaks to things like, you know, no one can agree on whether the election was legitimate or not, or whether COVID is real or not. But it extends to all quarters, and by that I mean that there's no ethos among the right or center where it's like, well, life is going to get significantly shittier, and we're going to have to give up some of these gains at the top in order to keep this thing going. Yeah. There used to be like some kind of that ethos even during the Cold War, and even during Reagan, this idea that like there had to be these concessions given to the middle and lower end to maintain some type of legitimacy in institutions. And now there's just none of that at all. Yeah. And so now it's going to be this dance in every country every 4 years between like a Brandonized center or center left candidate and an increasingly debased right wing, because there's a collapse in consensus reality of having to give concessions to anybody on the side of the center or even center right.
Yeah. And it's because like the political project of neoliberalism was dismantling all of those connective ties, those institutional political ties between regular people who are not defined as, you know, capitalists, as owners, but as just citizens, and the institutions that manage the state and manage its economies. And it all happened very slowly. And it was like it's like how they sterilize bulls by tying rubber bands around their balls, and that just cuts off circulation, and they literally fucking just fall off. I mean, that's been the remnant of like New Deal state, and it's like political, it's democratic political, like legitimacy. You know, the mass, what stood for mass politics in this country, and that actually did provide this like other pole. Because you couldn't just do whatever capital wanted, because you had institutions that people were able to assert influence over, and that the people within those structures, like the parties, had to represent if they wanted to keep their positions. Now it's all gone. The only people who are going to keep you in your position are people with money. The citizen has nothing to offer you, because, as we've said, they're all entrepreneurs, and where they're going to go is they're going to move towards money, like a fucking centrifugal force, like light bending towards a black hole. And then there's no counter pressure, because we've been depoliticized. Yeah.
And then when the final breaking point in all institutions happen, when there has been no concession given to people, and any attempt at a concession in the way that it may have been done 40, 50, 60 years ago is attempted, which always manifests as something like, you know, the PPP program.
Yeah.
Just a ridiculous, unmanaged, absurd thing that only benefits people at the very top. And when, you know, a normal person attempts it, they go to prison.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens? I mean, people love these like Civil War and apocalyptic scenarios. I don't really like predicting the apocalypse or an immediate revolution where everything is great thereafter, just because the certainty of it bothers me.
Yeah, right.
But it is completely uncharted territory for America.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, nobody, I don't think anybody should be offering any confident predictions because the fucking cracks are spreading and tessellating at such a velocity. How the hell are you supposed to get any percentage, any fraction of the variables in mind at any one time when you're thinking about it? I have no fucking idea. I think the thing that pushes me to reject a apocalyptic framing is just how seductive it is and how much I know that there's a motivated reasoning to those theories, which is that